We're going to have a look at a technique called two-handed tapping, or tapping it's abbreviated to. I'm going to record this in two parts. In this part one, I'm just going to basically explain the technique and some of the reasons why perhaps we might want to use it, or why guitar players might want to use the technique. And in part two, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail into the technique so that we can have a go at it. But for this part, I'm just going to try and explain by using some examples about what we mean by two-handed tapping and why it might be useful to us when we're playing guitar. So to get started, without further ado, I'll play a piece that heavily includes two-handed tapping so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So if you see someone playing on guitar and they play a technique that looks a bit like this, that's an example of two-handed tapping. Now, it looks obviously a little bit flash, a little bit shreddy. In honesty, it is. That particular piece is a Van Halen intro. If you've not heard of Eddie Van Halen, do a Google search, you need to know about Eddie Van Halen. Brilliant guitar player. So that's what I mean by two-handed tapping. Now, what actually is it? You can see I was doing something different from normal, particularly with my picking hand. I wasn't picking, I was up here somewhere. And why would I want to be doing that? Is it just so that I can look flash and look like an expert, or is there a reason behind it? The riff that I've just played, it starts out with a few notes. They're all played on the A string. So it starts off with the open A string, 3rd fret on the A string, 7th fret on the A string, 12th fret on the A string, and those notes are kind of repeated in the pattern. So it's slowed down, and if I was just playing it normally like I am now, hopefully you can see just by looking at that I've got a lot of position shift, and even then a massive stretch to do in order to play those notes. I was playing it super slow then, a lot slower than what I played it with the tapping technique. So by trying to play it the conventional way, by picking the notes out, trying to move my hand up and down, I don't think, personally, I'd be able to get it up to that kind of speed. There may be, obviously, players that are faster than me. Well, there's obviously players faster than me and better than me. They may be able to do that, but it would be very, very difficult for a lot of players to be able to play it conventionally and get it up to that kind of speed to make it sound cool like it did when I played it at the start. So the tapping technique is a way around that. Rather than having to fret every note using my fretting hand, so obviously you think about fretting your notes with your fretting hand, it's clues in the name, I'm actually using my picking hand, or what's normally my picking hand, to fret some of the notes. So in the example that I played, I actually played the open A string. I used my normal fretting hand to play the 3rd fret note and the 7th fret note, and then I use my picking hand to play the 12th fret note. Still a little bit of a stretch going on in my fretting hand, but you can see that I don't have to move this hand all over the place and be doing ridiculous stretches. So I've saved myself a lot of efficiency, and efficiency gives you speed. How I'm actually doing it? Well, it's a simple technique once you know it, like any technique, but all I'm actually doing is performing a hammer on with one of my fingers on my picking hand. So you should be familiar by now with the idea of Hammer Ons and Pull Offs. I've done a video, I'll link to that if you're not. Check that before really worrying about tapping, because you need to be aware of the Hammer Ons and Pull Offs. But what we're talking about is generating a note without having to pick it. So the note that I played on my 12th fret on my A string there is an octave A. I'm just doing that by hitting the string against the fretboard with, in this case I'm using my index finger. I could use I could use any finger that I want to, whatever I'm more comfortable with. I think I played the entire part using my index finger when I did the introduction. That just seemed natural to me. So rather than having to stretch all over the place and pick the notes as well. So obviously if we're picking, we need to have the coordination and timing. That's extra challenge. The tapping technique kind of takes that away, and what we're doing, we can pretend we've got an extra magic finger on our fretting hand that reaches up to here for us. I'll cover more of the technique in the second part of the video about, you know, how to get a nice good tapping technique, but that's the main reason why I want to do it, to play things that otherwise we might not be able to reach, and because of that we wouldn't be able to get up to the speed that we might necessarily want to get the parts up to. So that's one reason. Another reason, it's not as widely seen in examples on songs, but I wanted to mention it because it's something that is different. It's quite cool as well. Is we can use the same technique to play chord patterns and arpeggiated chord patterns as well. So what do I mean? I'm going to use another tough, shreddy sort of example by a guy called Joe Satriani. Again, if you've never heard of Joe Satriani and you play guitar, you should have done. So check him out as well. I'll see if I can put links to any of these players that I'm talking about. But one piece that he's done that caught my eye was a piece called Midnight. And rather than all the notes being on one string like they were on that previous piece, is actually forming chords by using fingers on both hands to play the notes of the chords, and by doing that he's able to create a nice sort of flamenco-ish arpeggio style sound that would be really difficult otherwise. So the first chord of the piece, we'd be looking at 7th fret on your E string, 9th fret on your A string, and then 12th fret on your G and your B string. So I mean, I can't stretch that. I could probably do a little mini bar. My little finger's not even strong enough to do a mini bar there because I'm not used to barring with my little finger. So to me that's an impossible chord to play at this moment. Maybe I could practice it and put a lot of hours in and get it and play it, but at this moment I cannot play that chord. So what he does on the song, he uses that same technique. He uses 2 fingers on the normal fretting hand, and then uses 2 other fingers on what's normally a picking hand, and he uses those to tap to create those chord arpeggios without having to do ridiculously hand-hurting chord shapes, and to be able to get the speed up to where it is on the song. I'll try and put a link to the original so you can hear it, because he plays it obviously better than what I can do. Just fluff that last note there. I'll leave that in. It's Joe Satriani, so I can get away with one fluff note. So that's the crux of tapping. It's a technique that we can use that enables us to overcome problems, mainly in terms of stretch, reach, and efficiency. It's mainly used, obviously I'm playing electric guitar, it's mainly used on electric guitar. It's used quite heavily in sort of rock, metal music, which is my background. It's also used in other types of music as well. It's completely different from your picking technique. As I say, I'm going to do another little video. I'm going to dig down a little bit deeper into the actual technique, maybe give you a couple of examples that you can have a go at, something a little bit less challenging than what I've done in this section, so that we could just get going. In terms of my setup, I started off with just a distorted sound. I didn't have any effects on, I don't think, but you can play them just the same on a clean sound. It's probably better off to practice on a clean sound, because then you can hear, as always, that you're playing the notes cleanly, and you know there's nowhere to hide, because technique is important. As with everything, we're going to start slow and build it up to build the speed up later. We don't have to rush towards getting the speed. So I hope that explains a little bit more about tapping if you don't understand it. I've needed to do this because I wanted to do a video on tapped harmonics, so it's been holding me up. So I've got this out of the way. I'm now going to do part 2 of this and then get the final part of the harmonic series finished. And with all those videos, as ever, I hope you enjoy.